Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tavia Danch, and I am the Community Outreach Manager at Colorado State University Global. I am pleased to welcome you to CSU Global's Career Success webinar series. We have a great program for you today, and I'm excited to begin this afternoon's discussion. But first, I wanted to share a little about us. CSU Global was created by the Colorado State University system in 2007 as the first independent 100% online state university in the US. We have over a decade of leadership in providing quality online education. So with that, I want to introduce you to Jeffrey Moss, the founder and CEO of Parker Dewey. He will be discussing micro internships today, how they can benefit your career and professional development, as well as how micro internships can be beneficial for your company. With that, I'll turn the time over to Jeffrey.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with everyone today. As you said, I founded Parker Dewey about 5 years ago, specifically to address the challenges associated with college to career. We've recognized that for college students, when you're graduating, it's incredibly difficult to determine what is the right career path, what is the right industry, the right role, the right size company. And oftentimes we don't all have great opportunities to get in the door. And we really built Parker Dewey to help address that challenge. So we are a mission-oriented organization exclusively focused on helping connect, we use the term career launchers, meaning college students and recent college graduates, to companies. We also provide ways, and we'll talk more about this, for companies themselves to engage with career launchers in a way that supports everyone. And we do this through the micro internship model. If we go to the next slide, we'll be able to see what is a micro internship. They are essentially short-term paid professional assignments. It's funny, people throw around the term gig or freelancing. These aren't gigs like driving an Uber or a Lyft or walking someone's door. These are real short-term professional assignments that allow college students and recent graduates to get real-world professional experiences even while they're still engaged in school. They apply across departments, so there's micro-internship opportunities in marketing, sales, technology, finance, accounting, strategy, you name it. And these are projects that typically require anywhere from 5 to 40 hours to complete, and they tend to be due in a few weeks to a few days to a few weeks out. So these are very, very short term. These don't replace 10-week summer internships. They don't replace full-time jobs. They're things that you can do nights, weekends, even if you have a full course load. They're also paid. So every one of the projects is not only professional, but it's paid. It allows career launchers to earn money while they're building their resume and demonstrating skills. So if we go on to the next slide, we can start to see how it works for the career launchers. Now, one of the rules for the platform is we do not allow colleges or universities to require this. We also don't allow companies to go mine the database or any of that other stuff. We want it to be something that you, as a career launcher, control. So the way it works is you create a profile, and we'll go through all of these in a little more detail. You create a profile, it takes under 5 minutes. You'll see the opportunities that are available. If you're selected, you work directly with the client, with the company on that opportunity. And then at the back end, not only, again, do you get paid, but we're not a staffing firm, we're not a recruiting firm, we're not a placement firm. So if there's a connection, a mutual interest on something longer term, it's a great opportunity to get an internship or a full-time job because there's no additional cost to you or the company or anyone else. So if we click through, I'll show you exactly how it all works. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So the first step, as I said, is one needs to create a profile. It takes about 5 minutes. It's an opportunity to really present who you are. We ask for basic information about yourself, your name, your school. If we go through to the next slide, you can see we also ask for your basic experience, education. You can upload your resume. You can include a link to your LinkedIn. We oftentimes get questions about why, even though we're capturing the resume or capturing the LinkedIn, why we still ask college students to type in that information. And just to let everyone on the call in a little secret, part of our view is if you're not willing to commit the 5 minutes to create a profile, that sends a signal. Do you really have interest in working on these projects? Are you really motivated? Or if you're creating a profile and you're sort of doing it quick and dirty and you're not spell checking or it's riddled with grammatical errors, that sends a signal to an employer. Again, we're not trying to be difficult. What we're trying to do is really democratize the process and ensure equal access to all. Once you create a profile, you'll see all of the micro internships available. You'll see the name of the company the micro internship is for, the description of the project, when it starts, when it's due, if it's on-site or remote. About 95% of the projects are remote, so there are things that you can do from your house, from your dorm room, again, wherever you want. You'll also see how much you are paid. So in this example with Blue Cross on the left, the payment's $315. If you're selected for the project, when it's complete, you will be paid $315. There are no additional fees or costs or transaction stuff or anything else. So that's actually what you will receive at completion. This is also not a challenge, meaning you're not going to be asked to do a whole bunch of work and not sure if you get paid or not, because only a winner gets paid. The only work required of you is to apply for the project, and every project, if we go to the next slide, has a short answer question or two. Why would you be a good fit? Why are you interested in this project? Please provide an example of your attention to detail. Each of these questions, again, takes a couple of minutes to fill out. And part of the reason we do it, first of all, is to make sure people aren't just clicking through. We want people to have a little bit of skin in the game, if you will. The second reason is, in this example, it lets people differentiate. We literally saw these as answers. My resume has no typos. You gotta love it. Again, this is how we democratize the process. This is how we make sure everyone has equal access. And that's important to us. In fact, that's, again, why we started this organization, is you have the complete control. One question we get a lot is, when you're looking at the various projects that are available, can you filter them? Can you look only by certain industries or roles? We've actually decided not to allow filtering because we want this to be a low-risk opportunity for you to explore, for you to look at different industries, to consider roles in departments you may not have thought about or otherwise. And that's, again, part of the goal. So what does the client see? If we go to the next slide, what you'll see is the client gets insights into, again, oh, sorry, I overshot it. What the client sees was your quick profile, your background, your experience, and then your answers to the questions. Once you're selected, and again, what they're doing is they're using these short answer questions as the way to make the selection. The other thing that is also very important is that from interviewing the clients, we've heard that these short answer questions are actually the #1 way they make the selection. They're not focused on GPA. They're not focused on where one goes to school. They're using this projects, these micro internships, as a way to meet folks and engage them. So again, these answers are very important. They shouldn't take an hour, but you should spend a couple of minutes and really think about, why are you interested? What is an example? So once you're selected for a project, if you click through to the next slide, we provide you with a whole bunch of stuff to make the experience awesome for you. We give you kickoff materials. We give you best practices. We give you checklists and other resources because we want you to have a great experience. And again, this is important. We also, throughout the course of the project, do things like checking in both with you and with the client to, again, make sure everyone has a great experience. But the resources we provide are not all of them. If you go to the next slide, you can see that we provide, or that you have access to a number of other resources, both to drive the outcomes and enhance the learnings. So while we provide, again, these templates and these micro lessons, what you as students have is access to your classroom lessons. You have access to faculty members. Show up at office hours. Faculty members love answering questions about real-world experiences that students have. It also creates a great opportunity for alumni engagement. Instead of reaching out to an alumnus asking about a typical day or why they decided to be a certain major, what we're finding is as the students are working on these micro internships, they'll reach out to an alum with expertise in the field. So if I was an alum, you might be working on a project for McGraw-Hill having to do with research on charter schools. And you might see that I was an alum and I did some work with charter schools. Reach out to me. Ask for my insights, ask my opinions, ask for my perspective. Not only does it drive an incredible outcome from the project itself, but it helps you build that relationship with an alum and start to formulate it in a very authentic way. Once you're selected also, if we go to the next slide, these are the things that we think are most important for the students working on the projects. First of all, take it seriously. This is something we talk about over and over and over again. While a lot of the clients, a lot of the companies like Microsoft and Pepsi and Leo Burnett and JP Morgan and others are using this as a way to build their pipeline of people who they may want to interview for internships, full-time roles. What's also important is the projects you're working on are real projects. These are projects that busy professionals have on their plate and need to get done. And they're trusting you to get it done. And there's real outcomes that are important to these professionals tied to the completion of the projects. And that alludes well to, again, following directions and checking your work. This is not college. 90% is not an A. It's failing. So check your work. Check it again. Don't rush. Get insights from others. Leverage the outside resources. Again, go to your faculty members, go to your professors, take advantage of the alumni. People love helping. And when you're working on these projects, it creates a great opportunity for them to share their insights with you and for you to build that relationship. And the last thing is be professional. Don't start an email with, hey, Jeff, wanted to get, or don't send emails that look like text, and don't wait days and days to respond to a phone call. Be professional. Those things make a difference. Where we've seen issues with micro internships they haven't had anything to do with the skills. They haven't had anything to do with someone's ability to use Excel or write or do research. They're these types of things. They're things where people are rushing through the task. There's situations where a client leaves an email or sends a voicemail and the student doesn't respond for 2 or 3 days. Like, those types of things just aren't acceptable in the professional workplace. And again, it's a great way to really hone those skills. If we go to the next slide, another few suggestions when students are working on projects, and we'll provide all of these again upon kickoff of the project, is do a great job. Again, I know I said it before, 90% is not an A. Check your work, recheck your work over and over and over. Something that's also important is managing the expectations. Stuff comes up. The folks on Parker Dewey on the client side, the company side, recognize that your college students are recent grads who are launching your careers, and they know things come up. They know people get sick. If an issue comes up, be transparent, be communicative. Don't surprise them. If you're having a concern about your ability to complete the micro internship, again, check in. We have an entire team here in Chicago of folks at Parker Dewey that spend 100% of their time making sure both students and companies have an incredible experience. So take advantage of that. And probably one of the things that we always want to highlight is focusing on the why. And this is important both at the beginning of the project before kickoff, throughout it, and even upon completion. understand why the client wants this done. Understand why they're asking you to do it. What are they trying to get out of it? Because that'll help you do a better job on the project, but it'll also help you learn more about the company or the industry. So for instance, if a client is asking you to write an article that they're going to share on their blog, why are they asking for it? Why is it important? Who is the audience? What are they trying to accomplish? And getting those insights will tell you a ton, not just for that project, but how that company conducts business, how they engage with various stakeholders. What are they trying to get out of it? It's interesting, even on projects that might seem a little more manual or tedious, like we're going to a conference next week. Here's the list of all of the participants. We need help crunching the list. Finding some information like email addresses or phone numbers or size of company or other information. Again, focus on the why. Why do they want that information? What are they hoping to get out of it? Are there other pieces of data you can provide to share more insights? Funny, NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, did a survey a couple of years ago about the so-called skills gap and the desire of companies and what skills they're looking for in recent college graduates and where their concerns were. And of the top 10 skills, 8 of them were not technical. 8 of them had nothing to do with one's ability to program or do accounting or any of those other very, very functional skills. In fact, the top 8 in particular were not technical or functional at all. They were things like problem solving, communication, attention to detail, grit, analytical thinking. Again, focus on all of those things while you're completing the project. Upon completion of the project, you'll receive feedback from the client. If we go to the next slide, you can see what that looks like. This is not Uber. There's no 1 to 5 stars. You'll be rated on the 6 areas that are most important to clients: timeliness, communication, presentation, skill level, overall satisfaction. We do not share this data with anyone other than you and your university or college. We do not publish it. There is no public rating or stars. We want you to get these real experiences. You'll also notice that you're not rated, again, 1 to 5 stars. You're given feedback from, hey, this is what I'd expect from an intern or new hire. This is below my expectations, above my expectations, or oh my goodness, this was done like an industry veteran. It gives you real insights, real perspective on where your strengths are and where there's opportunities for improvement. Companies also have the opportunity to provide more free text or written feedback. So they can provide public feedback that, again, we don't share, but you have the opportunity to share. Hey, Jeff, it was amazing working with you. Great job. I really liked the way you did blank. But they can also provide feedback that's just, again, confidential to you. So, hey, Jeff, you did a nice job. I don't want to ding you, but next time you work on a project like this, you might want to think about these 2 or 3 other things. As someone launching their career, think about how valuable that is, getting those insights. Think about how important it is and how useful it is to get these low-risk insights before you begin your real full-time job or internship post-graduation. If we go to the next slide, you can see some suggestions we make for after the projects are completed. We suggest that you outline the accomplishments. What was the work product? Think about the outcomes. So because of my work doing blank, I was able to help the company generate 25 new leads or increase their social media visits. The other thing you should do is update your LinkedIn and your resume. Again, what's important on this, and I'll show you some examples in a bit, is that you can convey that you are an independent consultant. You can convey that you're an independent consultant with Parker Dewey. You can share a description of the project. You are not allowed to share confidential information, though, about it, and the client's name unless you get the client's permission. But just to give you some idea, in 4 years of doing this, we have had 1 client out of several thousand who was not given permission, and that's only because it was a highly, highly, highly confidential project. Companies are happy for you to share that. They want to get the word out there. They want to build the relationships with you. So again, update your LinkedIn and your resume. Consider the learnings. Again, this is incredibly valuable. It's a great way to get insights into, do I like big companies or small? I thought I wanted to work at a startup, but I did this project for one and it wasn't for me. Or I never considered a role with a big pharmaceutical company, but I did this great project for Johnson & Johnson and learned I really like it. Again, consider your learnings. Think about what new perspectives you have. Are there different industries or roles that you never thought about? So again, I don't know, we had a conversation with a company this morning, the head of sales, and he said, there's just not many college students who say, I want to go into pharmaceutical sales upon graduation, or I want to go into insurance, or I want to go into banking. How do you explore those things? How do you help college students understand their interest in those roles? And as a college student, how do you explore if you might have interest in it? These projects are a great way. And then finally, don't lose momentum. After the projects are done, continue the relationship with the client, continue to build that network. If we go to the next slide, what's great is for college students, what they get out of it is 100% aligned to what they put into it. And these are just a couple of the success stories. I mean, these are just 4 of hundreds, if not thousands. So we had Tarek, who was a student who worked on a project for a company called Yellow, a technology company. And he literally had a job created for him by Yellow upon completion of the project. They were not looking for interns, but he did such a great job. The head of the sales team actually created an internship for him and then ultimately hired him. Microsoft, same thing. They were able to identify a student from a school they hadn't historically recruited from and built a relationship with Rachel. And Rachel, again, did an internship and then a full-time role. Suzanne at M. Holland. This is interesting because Suzanne graduated Columbia College here in Chicago, a small college here in the city, with a degree in accounting. And she wasn't getting interviews, and she wasn't getting job offers. Again, she wasn't even getting interviewed. She was working in a job that had nothing to do with her background in accounting because she wasn't getting interviews because she didn't have the quote-unquote right GPA or right school. And companies weren't giving her a chance. And meanwhile, M. Holland, which is a multi-billion-dollar plastics company, was having difficulty recruiting accountants because people don't think about M. Holland. They've never heard of it before. I live in Chicago. I live probably 20 miles from M. Holland's corporate headquarters. I never heard of it. And what we found is, again, through these projects, M. Holland was able to get help from Suzanne, not only on that project, but it ultimately turned into a full-time role. And then finally, Jonathan. Jonathan was great because he probably worked on 15 or 20 different micro internships during a few years while he was in college. And he was using these projects as a way to really hone in on his interests. Again, what was the right industry? What was the right role? He thought he wanted to do a startup. He worked on some projects for startups and it wasn't right. And then he was sort of curious about the education space. He worked on projects for those companies. And again, he was able to really hone in that he wanted a rapidly growing technology-driven healthcare company. And he wound up at Zermed. If we go to the next slide, there's a very specific case study I want to share. It's Noel. Noel is a Dell Scholar, first-generation student at Texas A&M. And he talks about the fact that he was going to career fairs and companies were looking at his resume and they'd get down to his GPA and they'd he was able to watch the facial expression. They just put it aside and said, thank you. They weren't giving him a shot. They weren't giving him the pathway in. And what Noel talked about, he was actually interviewed for an upcoming book called Freelance as a Force for Good. He talked about the fact that he was able to work on a number of these projects, both gave him more confidence in his ability because he was pretty beaten up feeling after getting all of those rejections, but he was not only able to build his confidence, but he was able to build a resume and a LinkedIn profile that was pretty incredible. And if you look at his LinkedIn, he has the 10 or 14 different projects that he worked on throughout college. And what was interesting is he talks about the fact that he was now watching recruiters' eyes as they were looking at his resume. And as they would get down to all of these projects that he completed, the whole conversation would change and they could not be any more engaged. And he talks about the fact that he had more interviews for full-time roles and had more full-time offers than any of his peers because he had these real professional experiences and was able to use those experiences to both demonstrate his skills, but also demonstrate to the companies why they were or why they should hire him and why he is interested in that company and that role. And that's really the student perspective. As we continue through, I want to make sure we're being transparent and showing sort of the students how recruiters view this. And also for those recruiters on the phone and alumni and other engaged sort of supporters of CSU Global, this is a great way to see the way the platform works from your perspective. So if we go to the next slide, what we recognized was every company is trying to improve their human capital. They're trying to gain early access to college students and build relationships with them over time. They're trying to differentiate and show college students why they want to work for their company. They want to drive diversity and inclusion. Everyone knows it's important, but they recognize a lot of the current processes don't let them authentically build those relationships. If we go to the next slide, we've also recognized that every busy professional at every company in every industry has projects. They have as one of our clients called them, the we shoulds and the I shouldn'ts. We should see what our competitors are doing. We should update our content, or I shouldn't. I've been on the job for 15 years. It's not the highest and best use of my time to be doing a first draft of a blog article or crunching a conference list. And what we found is these we shoulds and I shouldn'ts, again, exist across companies, across industries, across roles. And what's great, if we go to the next slide, we've discovered that micro internships both helps achieve those human capital goals of companies and also address those individual immediate needs of busy professionals. And what's happened is over the past couple of years, we've seen widespread acceptance of this. On the next slide, there's a few examples talking about why micro internships are being used both by companies and college students to improve the process. There was a great article a couple of years ago in Forbes talking about how Microsoft is using this type of a platform as a way to, again, build relationships with students at programs where they may not have historically recruited, or how students are using this to, again, find those right pathways. So how does it work for the companies? Again, the flip side of how it works for the students. First, company posts its project. They define what they need done. It takes under 5 minutes. As we said, typical project takes between 5 and 40 hours for a student to complete, tends to be due a few days to a few weeks out. Parker Dewey behind the scenes handles all of the process. So for companies, what that means is there's no HR burdens, there's no 1099s or crazy documents to fill out. For the students, what that means is you're going to get paid. You never have to play collections agent with a company. You're paid directly by Parker Dewey. It also means that you'll get all of the accounting and other forms that you need. If we go to the next slide, you can see that we've actually built a library of one-click projects. That includes a whole bunch of the most common things. For the companies, it's a great way to get started, to look at some of the departments that you're in or departments you're engaging. Because again, everyone in marketing needs help creating content or updating a social media calendar or creating an email campaign. Engaging college students on micro internships is a great way to get that support. And for the college students on the phone, take a look at these project examples also. They're on the website. They're a great way for you to get some ideas and perspectives on the different types of opportunities out there, both in general and opportunities and specific responsibilities tied to some of the most popular entry-level roles for you upon graduation. If we go to the next slide, what the student sees, and again, we saw this a bit earlier, but the students see all of the projects that are available. They decide what they want to apply for. On the next page, the companies see who applied and can select who it wants. If we flip through a couple of slides, as I alluded to on the next page, what I alluded to, thank you. As I alluded to before, what's important here is there's no onboarding or administrative burdens. So I mentioned before the gig sites up there, the typical ones, whether it's around driving a car somewhere or walking a dog, or even some of the gig sites focused on doing work. a lot of those platforms are built for people that want to be perpetual giggers. They want to be perpetual freelancers. They want to use it as a primary income source, or they're doing it, again, as a side hustle, purely for the money. And what that means is those platforms were set up in such a way that companies are actually taking employment law risk. They're also set up in a way that they take a huge percentage of how much each freelancer is being paid. And finally, they actually disincentivize hiring. So for instance, if you're a freelancer working on a typical gig or freelance site, and the company says, we want to hire you, and you want to go work for that company, the company owes the freelance site typically 25% of your annual salary. That creates a disincentive for the company to hire you. And what does that mean? That either means the company may not hire you, or they're going to hire you, but they're going to pay you a lower salary because, again, they owe someone else some money. Again, like a staffing firm fee. We developed our platform exclusively for college students and companies looking to engage college students. We want these gigs to turn into full-time roles. And as a result, we got rid of all of those processes and burdens. If we go to the next page, what we also show is that on these projects, it's a great way to evaluate the core skills. It's a great way for companies to look at college students beyond the GPA, beyond the major, beyond the resume. That when a student works on a project like content creation, the student is showing skills like research and communication and attention to detail and grit and analytical thinking, which happen to be those skills, as I mentioned before, are most important and most valuable to companies and most valuable for college students as they're launching their career. But they're also the skills that are most difficult to assess. These projects, these micro internships provide a great opportunity to assess them. And again, for the college students who are on the phone, if you take a look at this guide, it's a great way to understand those core skills you're going to need to demonstrate for some of the most popular entry-level roles out there for folks upon graduation from college. I saw a question come through about some of the companies we're working with, a number of companies. If we click through to the next slide, we have a few examples. Again, this is a small subset. We've worked with several thousand companies over the past 4 years. They range from one-person startups all the way through some of the biggest companies in the world, companies like Microsoft, companies like Pepsi, companies like Dell, like Albertsons, like Leo Burnett, Weber, Barilla. And what's great is the diversity of companies, the diversity of organizations. You have nonprofits like the World Economic Forum and Lumina Foundation, but you also have government agencies like the Illinois Department of Innovation and Technology. And you have financial services companies, and you have consumer packaged goods. So it's a great way to really explore different industries, different roles, different departments. And for companies, it's a great way to explore students from different schools and different backgrounds. If we go to the next page, one of the things that's important, and again, I alluded to at the beginning, is for companies who are having challenges with campus recruiting. And every company is. This really helps attract candidates. It helps reach candidates outside of target schools, or build relationships with candidates who might not be thinking about your company or your industry or your role. And ultimately, these micro internships are very much called mutual auditions. They provide a way for companies to assess potential candidates who they may want to interview or recruit, but they also provide a way of college students and recent grads to audition companies, to audition roles, to audition industries, and start to really figure out what is the right fit. And on the last slide, you can see there is a custom landing page specifically for CSU Global. Through this, it provides a variety of different benefits and a way to create an account and get started. As I said, there's no cost, there's no obligations. It's a great way to start to explore the opportunities. With that, we'll open it up to some questions I saw have been coming through.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for that wonderful presentation. I like you mentioned, would now like to open it up for questions. And as a reminder, to submit a question, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and type in the question. So in order, first question is for Addison. Can students earn credit for completing a micro internship?
Wonderful, thank you. Just to let folks know, my name is Addison Welsh, and I'm the Manager of Career Navigation Services here at CSU Global. Thank you, Jeffrey, so much for joining us today. That was wonderful. As for the question, so, generally there's a couple things we want to keep in mind when a student is receiving academic credit. And so the first thing to keep in mind is that you have to at least be with the internship for 8 weeks, and you have to have at least 10 hours a week at that internship. And so with a lot of these micro internships, there simply may not be enough time in order for you to be eligible to meet that requirement. So keep that in mind as you look at these opportunities. The other thing also is just that some of these micro internships, the application moves really, really fast. And so by the time that you are accepted to start the micro internship, maybe a term isn't starting quite yet in order for you to take the internship course. Or it's possible that it takes us a little while on our end to get all the documentation together in order for you to receive academic credit. So all that to say is it is possible. It really depends on the micro internship. One thing to keep in mind though is even if you're not receiving academic credit, these experiences are so important for your work experience, for your resume, and for learning more about what you want to do. In addition to career launchers, this is also great for people that want to transition to a new field as well.
Thank you, Addison.
Yeah, one thing, and this is Jeffrey here, one thing I just want to also add on to, and it's not directly tied to the credit, but we don't want folks to think that these replace traditional internships or replace traditional jobs. These are great complements. So for students who are not able to do a traditional 10-week summer internship, yes, these are great and they can certainly help, but they're not viewed at giving as in-depth of an experience as a 10-week summer internship.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next question for Jeffrey. Are the internships limited to U.S. students or is it worldwide?
Sure. Everything needs to have a U.S. component to it. And what I mean by that is it could be an international student who's studying in the U.S. Or they're domestic companies. We've worked with some international companies. It gets a little, we're always careful depending on where they're located, but there's usually, again, some kind of a U.S. tie. For international students in particular, the U.S. Department of whatever, I can't keep track of who approves these things anymore because it touches a few different departments, has approved gig-based work under CPT and OPT. So for any international student, we strongly suggest you talk with the International Student Office. We're happy to work directly with them on any of the paperwork or processes they need, but you need to be approved by the International Student Office under CPT or OPT.
Great, thank you. Next question. Can students complete an internship at a company they already work for?
Yes, I don't see why not. If a company you work for posts a micro internship and you have interest, by all means. It could be a great opportunity. It could be a great opportunity, especially if you're at a company and thinking about a different department or different role. I'm not sure I've seen it happen yet, but there's no reason it can. And by the way, if it's something where you're at a company and you're looking for them to provide these types of micro internship opportunities, please let us know. We're happy to work with you and get that all coordinated and set up for you.
And just to add to that, Tavia, one thing to keep in mind is if you are completing an internship for academic credit, let's say that you find something in that realm, a micro internship that's eligible for that, and it happens to be at the place where you work, we just have to keep in mind that at least 50% of the duties that you complete for the internship have to be different from that of your typical role. And that's actually just federal regulation. So you just want to keep that in mind.
Great, thanks, Addison. Next question. I know you already mentioned this at the beginning, Jeffrey, but how long do these internships typically last?
Sure. The typical micro internship takes a college student anywhere from 5 to 40 hours. They tend to be due a few days to a few weeks out. But what we're also seeing a lot of, and this ties back to my earlier comment, is that companies will oftentimes post a specific micro internship, a specific project, as a pathway to continued engagement, ongoing relationship, should there be a mutual fit. So some companies are very explicit about it. Like, we are posting this specifically tied to our campus recruiting. If you are not interested or may not be interested in a full-time role beginning in 2020, located in Denver, Colorado, please don't apply. Every now and then we'll see that, and they're very explicit. A lot of times what happens is someone like Addison might be doing a project for Microsoft, and there's a great relationship, and that project leads to another need. And Microsoft sort of says, hey, Addison, you want to do another project for us? Or do you want to do something bigger? Or do you want to do an internship? So we'll see a lot of that type of evolution.
Great, thank you. Is there a limit to how many micro internships a student can complete?
No, there's not. The ideal world, and I gave an example of Jonathan or Noel before, in the ideal world, a student is working on 5, 10, 15, 20 of these throughout their academic career. So not all at once. That would just be incredibly difficult, but they're working on these as a way to really hone in on what is the right career pathway, and also demonstrate a variety of different skills to different companies and build out their resume, etc. So that's really the ideal. We do advise, if you're working on a micro internship, but you still have applications in for others, just take a look and make sure that you're still able to complete those if you're selected. If you accidentally get selected or you find that you're not able to, as I said, let us know and we'll work behind the scenes to get everything taken care of. The one place we do get concerned is if we see the same student working on a series of micro internships for the same company. So not 1 or 2 or 3 where it's evolving as I mentioned in my prior comment, but where they're just doing it over and over and over and over for months on end, where it starts to feel more like an employee or starts to feel more like a traditional internship. In that case, what we'll do is we'll have the conversation with the company and we'll say, hey, you've been working with Addison on 10 things. Like, you might want to think about just hiring her. Because again, our platform is not meant to be a perpetual gig relationship platform. It's meant to be a way for both sides to meet and then hopefully ultimately turn it into a full-time role or something else.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Addison, but Jeffrey, feel free to weigh in. Since CSU Global is now offering computer science as a bachelor's degree, will there be micro internships in this field specifically?
I think Jeffrey may be able to answer that a little bit better in terms of what's available. In terms of integrating it within the curriculum or within the courses, that's actually something that I've spoke with the different program managers about, but at this time it isn't integrated because this is actually something that we've launched that's very, very new. Jeffrey, are there a lot of like cybersecurity, IT related micro internships?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there. I couldn't hear the question particularly well. I'm sorry.
I'll repeat that. So since CSU Global is now offering computer science as a bachelor's degree, will there be micro internships in this field specifically? And if you could just outline some of those that come to mind.
Yeah, no, we've seen a fair amount in computer science. We've seen ones around UX analysis. We've seen ones tied to cybersecurity. We've seen ones tied to website design. We've also seen a lot of projects on behalf of technology companies that might be more strategy or marketing related, which has been very interesting to me. Because it provides someone with a strong tech background to look in other related areas of technology. Again, to go do a competitive analysis of the XYZ space where XYZ is related to, again, CRM design or a certain programming language or whatever.
Great, thank you. Next question for Addison. How can students and alumni access these internship opportunities? Is the link to Parker Dewey and micro internships in Global Connect?
Yes, it is. That's a great question and something I wanted to chat about. So you can access micro internships through Global Connect. So if you're a student, you can click on, or an alumni as well, log into your student portal. And if you click on the left-hand menu, it says Global Connect or Career Center, you'll be able to access micro internships. And so we actually have a banner on that home page that you can click, and it will take you right away to the micro internship site. We also have, you can access a little bit more information about the experiential learning opportunities that we have by clicking on Career Center resources and then get experience. And then there's lots more information about micro internships and other opportunities as well.
Great, wonderful. How long does it take to get assigned to a project after developing your profile, Jeffrey?
That's a great answer, or a great question. It's almost 100% dependent on you. And what I mean by that is we had a student from a very prestigious Ivy League school who was on the platform for quite a bit of time, and she emailed us and said, I've applied to a bunch of these projects. I think it was 10 or 15, and I haven't been selected yet. What's up? And we took a look at her profile and we dug in. And we looked at her answers to some of those short questions. And it became pretty apparent why she wasn't selected. Where one of the questions asked, why should we pick you for this project? And she said, I'm a student at prestigious Ivy League school and I have some free time. That was her answer to the question. I wish I was making it up. We'll have other students who apply who have resumes that are riddled with typos, or don't complete their profiles, or apply for a project that requires prior experience in Excel and they've never worked in Excel before. That's more of the exception, but those are the situations where students aren't selected and where they have challenges. And what's great about the platform is that unlike the traditional campus recruiting process, where it all takes place at once, and if you find out that you did something wrong, you have a typo in your resume, or you're not answering a certain question well, you can course correct. You can learn from that. You can dig in. And I know the CSU Global team is happy to work with you and take a look. So if you're applying and not getting selected or having issues, or you just want insights, I mean, they have a ton of expertise. Anyone that emails us, we're happy to engage with and dig into their profiles and give them that type of feedback. But it really depends on you. So we'll have students who create a profile, who apply for projects that day, and they're selected that day. We've had that happen. We've had students where, again, back to my earlier example, it might take a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Noel talks about the fact that he applied to a number before he was selected. And what he did was he realized that he wasn't putting his best foot forward when he was applying. So it was a great learning opportunity. Some of the best practices we see, so beyond the obvious, make sure one's profile is really built out and professional and all of that stuff. The other thing we're doing is we're seeing a lot of students who get in the habit of logging into the Parker Dewey site every morning or every day at lunchtime or every evening and seeing what new projects have come up. And they just get in that habit because, again, while the benefit as compared to the traditional full-time campus recruiting is that there's constantly new projects getting posted, the challenge is there's constantly new projects getting posted and picked. So if you're logging in once a week or once a month, you might see 20 projects today, but miss out on the 20 that were posted yesterday and picked, and 20 that were posted the day before, and 20 that were posted, because again, we're seeing this constant flow of new projects getting posted, and companies tend to select, call it 24, 48, 72 hours after posting them. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. There are also, and we get this question all the time, there's also companies that are slow in selecting. So there's some projects on the platform right now that passed the kickoff date and even some that passed the due date, if they are still up there, they're still available. Our client success team is working with the companies to try to get them to update that. But every now and then the companies are just slow. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that is valuable insight and really helpful in terms of tips. So thank you. I do appreciate that. So I just wanted to mention that we do have a lot of questions. So we're going to try to answer them. And we do have about...
I'll be brief.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And we have about 9 minutes left. So again, we'll try to answer them as much as possible. So next question, are micro internships only for students working on their undergraduate degree? Can graduate level students and alumni complete micro internships?
Sure. We Parker Dewey specifically use the term career launcher, and we use that to define undergraduate students, graduate students, and recent college graduates. That said, it is an open platform. Anyone over the age of 18 can use them. The reality is that for someone with 20 years of professional experience in a given field, they're just not going to find the micro internships particularly interesting. So if you've been a marketing professional for 20 years, working on a campaign management or content creation just may not be intellectually interesting to you. So we're just, again, not the right place for a side hustle. But if you're someone who's launching your career or looking to make a change, you're certainly welcome. And again, the companies are using us specifically for the career launchers.
Wonderful. Thank you. You answered my next question, so I'll leave that one out. Are the internships claimed on the student's income taxes?
Yeah, so the student for the duration of the micro internship is a 1099 independent contractor of Parker Dewey. I am not allowed to give tax advice per our counsel, but at the end of each year, or first of all, at the beginning of the project, when you're selected, you'll be provided accounting documentation, including a 1099 form. And at the end of the year, you will be given your completed 1099 with all of the income that you generated. There are various thresholds for where you have to claim it. Again, I'm not allowed to give advice on that. If you have specific questions, I would urge you to take a look at the rules around 1099 taxes or talk with whoever helps with your taxes. Great,
thank you. Next question, are there any technical requirements for completing micro internships?
Technical requirements, I need to think through each. The vast majority of projects are ones that any college student, irrespective of major or background, could complete. They require skills like research, writing, problem solving, attention to detail, etc. There are some projects that have very specific technical requirements. Someone who can, back to my earlier example, use Excel, code in Python, background in email campaign tools, or CRM system. Those requirements, if they're there, will be highlighted in the project when it's posted.
Great. How are opportunities vetted for scale and scope of appropriateness? And how does Parker Dewey make sure that the projects aren't too large to complete in the amount of time given?
Yeah, we have a client success team here that goes through every project for that purpose. We have also developed a series of examples in our project library where they've already been pre-vetted and pre-scoped. The vast majority of projects on the platform are built using that library. There's a small sample you can see from our website, but there's a much broader library behind the scenes. So we're going through and making sure everything is fair. Over the past 4 years since launching Parker Dewey, we've been doing detailed analyses of projects that have been completed to make sure that they are fairly scoped. And if a student or a career launcher has concerns at any time, they should reach out to us.
Great, good to know. Oftentimes, the internships ask for writing samples. With no experience in internships, do you have any hints or tips on what to offer as an example or a sample?
Yeah, well, first of all, the questions themselves a lot of times serve as writing samples on our projects. And the only tip is to be thoughtful about it and proofread it. I don't think there's any secrets to winning it. Winning probably not even the right term. I don't think there's any secrets to getting selected other than taking the 3 minutes and thinking about what would be a thoughtful answer. What lets me put my best foot forward in a way that that's going to be compelling. You'd be shocked by how many we see where, again, they're riddled with typos. They're riddled with grammatical errors. The student clearly just hasn't put any thought into it. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I think, in fact, that actually democratizes the process because those attributes have nothing to do with, again, GPA or academic pedigree. It's truly a way to level the playing field. So spend the 5 minutes.
Great. Are there specific updates that one should make to their resume before applying for a micro internship that can give a better chance for being selected for such a project?
No, not at all. I think I'm generally not a big fan of targeted resumes. Sorry if that contradicts the guidance from the folks at CSU. I believe your resume is who you are, and it gives a great way of demonstrating specific skills and experiences. Part of what Parker Dewey hopes to do, and part of what we do is give career launchers the opportunity to enhance their resume with additional skills and additional experiences to really stand out. So my only suggestion would be, before you do your first micro internship, just make sure your resume is, again, proofread and put your best foot forward. But then after you complete your first one, update it. Put in Parker Dewey. Highlight the fact that you've completed even just one micro internship and what were the lessons learned. It's a great way to stand out. Again, look back to Noel's from the earlier slide. You can see he's pretty incredible, and when he applies for projects, he has a higher likelihood of getting selected than someone who hasn't.
Great. If I live in the Caribbean and I'm currently enrolled at CSU Global, am I eligible to apply?
If you can send an email to support@parkerdewey.com, I will run it by the legal team and we'll circle up with CSU. I don't want to give bad advice.
Great. And so we have 2 minutes left. We'll try to go through as many of these as we can. How open are companies to non-traditional students? Your general feedback.
They're very open. They're very open. A lot of the companies in particular are using this as a way to build relationships with folks from non-traditional backgrounds in a variety of different ways, whether it's first generation, underrepresented populations, adult learners, etc. This is a way to build those relationships, and it serves as an effective pipeline for them to enhance their campus recruiting in those areas and for folks from non-traditional backgrounds to get in the door.
Great. Upon completion of an internship, how soon can I do another assignment?
Immediately.
Great answer. Do companies offer a letter or certificate of internship?
No, they do not. And that's one of the reasons we're also very direct in highlighting the fact that on your resume, on your LinkedIn, do not put that you are an employee or intern with Microsoft because it potentially puts you at risk. They will highlight the fact, or you can highlight on the fact that you completed a project for a software company, or if your the manager at Microsoft gives you permission to use the Microsoft name, great. You can also talk with that person about serving as a reference. And that's what we're seeing a lot of the students do. So I completed a project for Microsoft, for Parker Dewey on behalf of Microsoft. I now have Adam from Microsoft as a reference who can talk to it.
Wonderful. And the last question, and there's been so many because your presentation is so meaningful, so thank you so much. Is there a go-to person at Parker Dewey to help students if they have questions about the process of developing their profile or any other questions that we weren't able to get through today?
If you email support@Parker Dewey, we'll make sure you get all of the help, just depending on who the right person is, because obviously questions around international law get filtered one way, questions about updating one's profile get filtered a different way. But just email support and we'll take care of it.
Thank you, and that concludes our Career Success webinar for this afternoon. Thank you to all of our viewers for joining us. We hope you found the conversation informative and useful for your career goals. On behalf of everyone at Colorado State University Global, thank you and have a great rest of the day.